All right, it is a big day today. AMD 5600. I waited in line. I got a story for you all. Buying, building, and we're going to do some live benchmarks today as well. This is going to be awesome. Let's get on the desktop, or, well, let's get over to chat, I should say, and start going over this because yesterday I actually went into Micro Center, of all things. And, well, it was interesting. There was a long line. There wasn't enough stock, shocking as that may be. But getting on Amazon, Best Buy, any of the other major sites, all the scalpers took everything. There was nothing left over, much like the PS5 and pretty much every electronic launch this year. Oh, it's just a complete mess, to say the least. I had to censor myself a little bit there. But Micro Center, thankfully, still has it to where we can actually go in to the store, stay in line. Hashtag not sponsored. I know they sponsor a lot of YouTubers, but I just really like the fact they do this. So I was able to get there at open, stay in line. By the time I got to buy the processor, everything was out of stock except for this guy right here, the old mirrored Ryzen 5 5000 series. But I stayed in line, got it all done, got my voucher, got the processor, and also got, boom. Can't see it, but little Prime 5070 motherboard. There's a couple things about taking this home that was interesting as far as the build process, which I'm going to get into in a second. I really wanted to go with like the 5900 or the 5800 or 5950, but it seems like AMD sent all those to all the YouTubers. So the fact I got a 5600, honestly, I don't think they really sent those processors out to many YouTubers. And I think that works out because this is actually relevant, because Level 1 Techs yesterday just released some benchmarks going over the 5800 and 5900. And the fact that I went and bought a 5600 kind of fits into the theme of things, which is actually really nice. And it installed relatively well. As far as the build process goes, I got it home. I went ahead and just was like, hey, this is going to be my main studio PC. I looked at single core performance numbers, those types of things. I was using a 2700, and I do a lot of video encoding, as you figure. The 5600 should have a lot better performance. I haven't actually encoded or recorded a video on it, as I really just wanted to get it in and be ready for this live stream. I will say I did get a good deal on the promo on that. That motherboard was about $114 after rebate because I was able to bundle it with the CPU. So about $100 for the motherboard. This one retailed for $300 on the purchase. I did run into somebody that actually watches the channel. I was walking out and a guy named Chris walked up to me. He's like, hey man, I watch you on YouTube. I'm like, awesome. That's great. And he actually shot me an email, and he actually has a YouTube channel, but he works at Micro Center, and I thought it was pretty cool. Here, I'll just give him a little plug real quick, just so you guys can see him. Open Source Slayer. He has like a couple video uploads. He's just started uploading to YouTube, and I was like, that's cool. And his setup, I actually watched part of that video. He actually has decent audio, way better than I did when I started. So I love seeing people get into open source, YouTube, all that, and be able to show their passion. So go subscribe to him. He has like 50-something subscribers. The first 100 subscribers took me almost 100 videos. And he seemed like a really cool dude. But that's what coming out of Micro Center, ran into him, and it was kind of neat. But in other actual build news, let's get into the actual build process now, because that's something I did want to go over. The build with the motherboards, those 500 series motherboards are not up to date. On day one, I figured this would happen but it will not just be plug and play kind of setup. That motherboard, I didn't even try to post it, to be honest with you, because I knew it just wouldn't work because it would be running an old BIOS. However, BIOSes have gotten a lot better than the olden days, back in my day. It was not up to date. It was running about an April version of BIOS, and it didn't get 5000 series support until September. The BIOS update for this particular motherboard was 2606, and I think it's on 2812 right now for the actual BIOS numbers. Asus has a nice little thing where you can actually plug in a USB drive, so even if you don't have an old CPU to plug in to update the BIOS, you can actually boot directly, I believe, from the USB drive in what's called recovery mode and be able to update the BIOS directly that way. However, I didn't try that. I had a 2700, so I just popped in my old processor, updated the BIOS, did that swap, and it was done. I will say, during that build process, I did it really late. I had my old day job because I got to Micro Center, did all that, went back to my day job, worked a full 8 hours, came home, and once I got home, that's when I ate dinner with the fam, got all the kids to bed, and then finally around 9 o'clock I started building this thing. I wish I made a video about this, but I'm almost kind of glad I didn't as well, because you all would skewer me in the comments. I made so many silly mistakes just because I was really tired. But at the end of the day, it got done. We got the 5600. It's on the actual desktop here. I went ahead and ran some Phoronix benchmarks last night. I did not do a full test suite on the burn-in. All I did was I did the GCC one, which is a compute test on Phoronix, and then I also did, I think, Open Arena and some other fun ones that don't really mean anything, and a Blender test, which is also heavy on processing as well. So I have those results as well we can get into. Overall, though, my impressions of the 5600, pretty awesome. Good bang for the buck. It's not something where I'm like, hey, if you're on the 3000 series, I think you should go run out and buy, unless you just absolutely have to get every single little bit. But I will say I'm pretty happy with the upgrade. And let's show you the actual Phoronix benchmarks right now, because this is, let's just pull these up just so you can see what they are, and then I'll actually showcase some of the global community on open benchmarking and show you what that looks like as well. And like I said, I didn't have time to do too many tests, but the two main tests I really wanted to show was the Time GCC and Blender. Both these tests, nothing to write home about, not like crazy, but these weren't isolated. I am not using a compute kernel. There's a lot of little gotchas here to where these results are definitely poorer than expected, and that is just my setup. And I accept that because most of my compute stuff I'm not huge into. But these are the actual results. If we go over to here and go into the Blender benchmarks, you can see kind of what to expect. Obviously, like a 64-core AMD EPYC does it in about 25 seconds. And if you look, I'm in the neighborhood of right in here, the 200 seconds. So it's a median to low tier score on this benchmark, 30-ish something percentile on this CPU. Not great. But then again, if you look at what I'm running, it isn't terrible either. Which isn't terrible is my endorsement of it all. I am running a Zen kernel, which is more optimized for basic computer workstation tasks, not necessarily heavy compute. Also using just the Ryzen 5600X, like I said, and then 580. And we can actually run a benchmark here. I wanted to go ahead and run this just so you can see some graphics. I know yesterday I did make that, hey, I'm stopping using Linux for gaming. But at the same time, we can go ahead and pull up some gaming benchmarks. Why not? as we can do, let's do a Mango HUD and just do like a Shadow of the Tomb Raider run here and do a little background. I may have to mute the actual sound volume so we don't get a bunch of ambient sound in here. Let's just take this all the way down and run this. And then we can answer some questions in chat why this runs in the background. And we're only going to do one test today because I don't want this to run for hours. So we're just going to do a 1080p, highest settings, and we'll just do SMAAT anti-aliasing 2x. And we'll run that, and sure, we'll save their test results. In case someone wants to see this on the replay, I'll leave test results down there. Well, let's just go ahead and toss it into our Zen. I hate myself. That's why I made it that way. All right, and we'll call this one the 5600. And regular description. Let's run this. Usually they burn the first test, and then it runs through 3 times for a total estimated runtime of about 15 minutes here. Let's go ahead and get going. And here's our first one. As you see, it's about 12 threads. You got all that going. You'll notice the CPU does not have any temps on this, and I did get some IRQ failures at the very start, or warnings, I should say, not actual errors. On boot, this is 5.9. It will start reading temps on my CPU come 5.10. So I am waiting for the 5.10 kernel to release on the 5600 or 5000 series, which should be pretty good. And overall, and also this is an RX 580, so very underpowered graphics here. Pretty old, what, 3-4 years old now at this time, running this title. So those are a couple considerations to make, and it's not really heavy CPU. As you see, it's only really doing about 15 to 20% of the CPU usage on this. But you can actually see the core clocks. It actually is up into the 4000, 4400s on this type of CPU, which is amazing. As far as the thermals go, I have no idea. I don't do any overclocking. I don't do any water cooling. I think my most disliked video on the entire channel is me saying water cooling is a waste of money. Only fools buy AIOs and do water cooling. There's another hot take for you that most people don't agree with. But then again, that's just my thoughts. I like to just build a computer. I'm not a big hobbyist when it comes to doing custom loops and those types of things. That's just not my jam. I'm not a real big hardware guy. I'm more into the software aspect of things. How drunk was I when I started the build? Well, Donald, I'll let you in on this. Yes, I had a couple drinks, of course. It's, you know, the pandemic. That's like required as you go. And I did forget to hook up the power to the GPU. I did forget to... Oh man, there was so many things I forgot. I was tired and had a couple drinks. So it was like the most epic. It would have been great live stream material because you guys would have roasted me. But at the end of the day, it got built. These days, I think a child can put together a computer without breaking it. Unless you're on, like, you're wearing socks on like a carpet, rubbing it together, trying to zap it. And even then, it's hard to break a computer these days. So everything's stock. Thermal paste, all that, everything's stock. I just used the stock cooler. Nothing crazy with this setup. And this is just an RX 580. So it's RX 580s go for anywhere between 150 200. I'm waiting to replace it as I want to get the new 6000 series, which will probably be me standing in line in Micro Center again because scalpers are just going to take over and do all of that all over again. Oh, my word. Yeah, Don. You guys would have laughed your butt off for sure. Because it was terrible. It was a terrible build. I was even sitting there roasting myself. I was like, wow. This has to be the worst computer build I've ever done. And I'm getting this unsupported Linux distribution because this is running Arch. on an unsanctioned kernel, as I said before. So I expect to see those errors. Yeah, you can actually, you might even be able to pick up the hum going on in the background. As I do these benchmarks, I can hear the fans spin up. Most of that fan noise is coming from the GPU, though. As you see, it's barely even touching the CPU here. I do have results from the 2700 we can compare after this finishes as well. So this isn't all for naught. It's not exactly a great test to be running, but it is a fun test to run while just chatting. So I'm going to go pull over to chat now. Or actually, I'll do it right after this test, and we'll get back onto chat. But I'm going to catch up real fast, see if anything I missed. I'm sure it's plenty I missed. Yeah, one thing I do want to talk about as far as Linux gaming goes, I wasn't saying Linux gaming's dead. I just said I'm not going to bother with it. And that is not me. It's mainly me frustrated, but it's also, I always tell everyone I use whatever's best on the market. Whatever the best solution is what I rock. That's my jam. If it's Windows, if it's Linux, if it's Mac, whatever, I don't care. I just use whatever's the best or the easiest. And for me, I love to live in Linux. As you see, it's still my daily driver. It's what I loaded up this 5600 with. But when it comes to gaming, I love having just a dedicated Windows box back there and Moonlight, and I just stream all my stuff. There's no reason for me to be playing games in Linux because I'm just installing proprietary stuff, and it can only be done on this box, and I have to finagle with it and all that stuff. And it wasn't so much those two titles being dropped, but it was just a culmination of things. When it came to frame rate drops because it was running in Linux, because there's problems or frames that are lost in transition using DXVK. You also have non-supported titles using Easy Anti-Cheat, which I kind of went over in the video. And then you also have just certain games that don't work because of de novo and other kernel required DRM that breaks it. Then you also have unsanctioned launchers such as Epic Launcher, which there's some workarounds to, but some not. There's a lot of gotchas with Linux gaming, and that's why I made that video. I was getting a lot of people in chat asking that question. Hey, is this in Linux? And it's disingenuous for me to push Linux gaming when I don't really game that much in it, unless I'm doing a video or something of that nature, and I wanted to just make that video to say, hey, when it comes to gaming, I love Linux gaming. I love Linux, but at the same time, the real sad truth is if you're a hardcore gamer, you want to play 100% of the library, you're going to be running Windows. And for most people that aren't tech savvy, you're probably going to want to, at the very least, have a Windows dual boot. Some people do VFIO. Some people do a secondary box like me. I love the secondary box solution because it's just so stinking simple. All right. We saw a couple run-throughs. We got one more run-through here. But I'm going to switch over to chat. You'll see it up in here. Got a little new layout. And we'll just let that run through last time. And then we'll pull back to the results as well, just so you can all see chat. What are your thoughts on Valve's packaging to get games working on Linux? Valve Snap Flatpaks. I am for any kind of solution for Valve. I know that those that aren't technically inclined are going to give up on Linux gaming rather quickly. As many people will definitely hate on me for what I said in yesterday's video, just know that the worst thing you can do, for those Linux users out there, some people are probably Windows users watching this, which is totally fine. The worst thing you can do is push a Windows user to Linux and say, hey, Linux gaming's great. And anyone can do it. Because that's not the truth. And it was hard for me to make that video because I knew everyone would hate it. But the truth of the matter is, if you push someone to do something and you tell some hardcore gamer that everything's there, you're just lying to them and you're setting them up for disaster, and you're setting up Linux gaming to have a bad rap or to not set the right expectation. And it's about setting the right expectations that's the possible. Hey, David, have a good weekend, man. Thanks for stopping in. Can you easily run an EA Origin launcher using Wine? Joseph, the answer is kinda. Like everything with Linux gaming, there's little gotchas. I ran, actually some of my first live streams, if you actually go to Titus Tech Talk, where I host all the full live streams I've ever done, and on that channel, you'll see an Anthem playthrough where I was actually playing EA Origin Anthem, and it worked pretty good for about a month or two, and then there was an update that came through and broke it, and I actually had to uninstall, delete it, and reinstall it, and that's fine and all, and it did continually working, and this is a little asterisk that I'm talking about, but I had to reinstall 80 gigs, or 100 gigs, however big that game is. That's another day of lost productivity. I even tried to do some things with the Wine container to pull in a lot of those data files so it wouldn't have to re-download everything. But the average user would just delete the whole thing and then re-download it, and it would just, again, put a bad expectation in their mouth. And that's not what I'm about. Yeah, Wolfgang did a video on Windows AME gaming is better than Home and Pro. AME is something that I showed, I can't remember if I actually showed it in a video or if it was a live stream, where I actually stripped down and deleted like Windows Update and all that. It's fine, but it's not a great solution when it comes to longevity. Because eventually you're going to need to update your system. And updating AME is a pain in the butt. It just is. I wish it wasn't, but it is. For sure. Alright, last run here. This is the final test run 4. And then we should have some results and we'll do the comparison to the 2700. I don't really anticipate to see much difference in frames. It's not exactly a one-to-one comparison either, as this is running an Arch Linux, and I believe I was on Linux Mint on those other tests. I'll pull it up and we'll definitely check it afterwards. Yes, I am about to also do, as far as Linux OS, an alternative to Android and iOS. I do definitely need to follow back up with that and do an update video on PinePhone and some other ones. I'm getting a new Pixel 4a in the 4G model. I should have that, I think, in the next week or two probably. And with that new Pixel, I'll probably load up some new stuff. I opted for that because it's only $350 and it's 4G instead of 5G. Most people are really like adamant about going after 5G, but I don't really like 5G as it really drains the battery, and that extra bandwidth usage on a little small screen, while it's nice, it's not something that I'd like to sacrifice battery for. I'd rather have a phone that lasts longer than one that drains faster and gets hotter and uses more energy. And 5G radio waves. I'd insert a joke here, but I know people are a little sensitive these times about 5G. And I don't want anybody coming after me going, "Oh my God, you said this. You said 5G's the devil," and then I would never hear about it for like 2 years. That would be awesome. Yeah, overall though, this new Ryzen CPU is really, really nice. I think it'll be a good pairing. The 5600 should cover most of the enthusiasts out there, and anybody that's really wanting an awesome gaming CPU. This one is bar none the best CPU I have in my house now. Which, funny enough, my last one that was better was, I think, the 3000 series, the wife build I did. I think I did that build 3 or 4 months ago. So you can always look that up as well. Can you install Ryzen 5 with Windows 8 SE? Windows 98 and Windows 95 have major install issues on modern processors, Brandon's. You can cheese it doing like a VM. It's not exactly the same thing though. A lot of people don't realize, can you install Ryzen 5 on a Windows 7 box out of the gate? And the answer to that is no, you cannot. It's one of those deals where Windows 7 you should just stop using. There's ways to get around that. There's solutions. You could always do it like on a bare metal hypervisor and then throw Windows 7 on top and then do it that way. That would also be fine. But again, it's Windows 7. Don't stop using Windows 7. And if you're going to use something end of life, don't use Windows 7. Use Windows 2008 R2. That's far better. It doesn't have nearly the telemetry and bloatware that Windows 7 has. Windows 7 is not what it was 10 years ago. I've done that rant. I'm not going to do it again. Not going to do it again. But it's worth noting. Yeah, the Destination Linux guys hate me. Oh my word. Yeah, they have a dire hate for me. And I'm pretty sure everybody at Canonical pretty much hates me too. But whatever. It's a lot of people are just like, thin skin. You gotta have some thick skin to be in YouTube land for sure. All right, here is the results of Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I'm curious to see how we did. You know, like I said, this is oh man, this is actually a little bit higher than I thought. Okay, 59.5 on the average result. We'll go ahead, pull this up. Actually, we'll say no. We'll upload it to benchmarking so y'all can get the results here. But I think I have that as well. I think I have some old results we can actually pull up. Let's see here. Where are you at? All right. So this is Shadow of the Tomb Raider 5600, 59.5. We're using, and let me zoom in here. Pharonics, I love them, but sometimes the font size is a little small, so we have to zoom in about 150%. All right, so we got the 5600 6-core, the X570 on this one, 16 gigs of memory, discs. You know, I'm using all solid state, not in the NVMe on this guy, so that definitely plays a factor in this as well. But all this should be identical to my old results. And let's see if I can't pull up my old results. Because I did a result on ZanMod when I was comparing custom Linux kernels. And I believe we can just show result ZanMod test 1. And I believe this will pull up the results and we can see what it was on this hardware. The only thing that really switched out was the motherboard and CPU. And I don't think we'd see any FPS difference based on the GPU being the bottleneck here. Obviously, a 580, it's barely even working out the processor, so I don't anticipate any difference between the two. But let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a big difference. There's almost a 10 FPS difference. All right. Using that, you can see these are the same presets we used. And let's look at the hardware that this one was using. That seems... Okay, there's definitely some other factors here, because I was like, 10 FPS is a little bit much. All right. On this guy, this was a... I don't know if you guys can see that or not. This is a 2700 8-core with a B350 ASUS motherboard. I'm not a big fan of ASUS motherboards, but they have the best deals, so I always end up buying them because I'm cheap. Same memory, same hard drives that's in here, the same graphics card. This was running Ubuntu 2004 as far as the OS goes. This was Linux Mint, I think. So Ubuntu 2004 Linux Mint, that thing about 4 months ago. It was running kernel 5.6. And as you see, it was all right around 50 frames per second on ZanMod and Mesa 2004. So different Mesa version, different AMD GPU version, different kernel version, and using a stable release where this is the more bleeding edge. So that is kind of interesting. Things to remember here is the Mesa 20 that just came out and kernel 5.6. This was a sizable jump. This one is kernel 5.9, which 5.10 has some optimizations for this generation, which I'm curious to see. It also will give me thermals, where I'll actually be able to see what my thermals are on my processor, which we can't right now on 5.9. So 5.9 and Mesa 20.2, a little bit different there. So newer kernel, newer Mesa drivers. Coming down into this, you can see the result. I did not anticipate a 10 FPS uptick. That does not seem big enough. Or that seems a lot bigger than I expected. I thought around the same results because all we switched out was the processor, which was not the bottleneck in this test anyways. Cool. Well, I love surprise benchmarks. I didn't anticipate that. That is very, very neat. What are y'all's thoughts on the new 5600? Because, holy crap, that's kind of neat. Yeah, drop the quality to low, so the CPU is more of that. I don't believe, let me look if I pull up that old benchmark. Do I have, I wish I did an open arena benchmark. We can do an open arena benchmark real fast to finish this out, guys. Because I don't even think that would really, how many frames do you guys, what is the prediction for how many frames on open arena, which is a really old game, so it's going to be pretty heavy on the CPU. Yeah, the 5000 series, wow, I'm impressed. That's, like I said, I didn't anticipate that big of an uptick. Oh yeah, Microsoft Flight Simulator, you would see a massive uptick. I've seen those benchmarks already, which is, again, very surprising. All right, let's do what, Phoronix. Let's do some Mango HUD, Phoronix test suite, and we're gonna run Open Arena. This is like a Quake 3 spinoff or so. And let's go to full screen on this guy. This is, well, this might make people nauseous actually. Yeah, we're not gonna do full screen. I don't want anybody going into epileptic seizures because this is gonna be probably, I know before on the 2700 I was at like 300 frames per second. Something like that. It was a ridiculous amount of frames per second. It's nothing you want to see in full screen. All right, we'll run 1080p, of course, as that's what this card is capable of. Do you want to save these results? Sure. We'll go ahead and throw this on our Zen 5600 GCC test, and we'll just call it 5600. Launch this in. We're going to run trial count of 3, so it should run 3 times. Holy crap, that's some frames per second right there. Yeah. Trust me, it doesn't matter who you are. You ain't gonna read 500 frames per second or whatever that is. That's a lot of frames per second. It looks like it's bouncing between 300 and 500 here. I don't even know. That's a fast test, though. Yeah, the 10400 is still a nice rig. It's not like Intel is complete crap or anything. Well, that was probably the fastest test of the day. Look at that. What do we got for Open Arena here? Test result, 81st percentile. What? Hot dog. That was good. What was the average frames per second? 350s. First test 357, second test 352, third test 358, an average of 356 frames per second. Deviation of less than 1%. Well, hot dog. We'll go nope. We'll go ahead and upload that. And sure, we'll add all that in. And we're not going to launch into this. And I'm going to throw this in chat so you guys can have this result. And if you want to refer back to it, oh, copy address. Nope. All right. Well, that did not work. Okay. Let's just open that link then. And there is the final result of this benchmarks. Just some basic stuff that's done. All these are on the 5600, even though I messed up my labels here a little bit. That was me just being silly last night. And yeah, nothing too crazy. I was really impressed with a lot of the gaming results, which, again, I didn't expect that much of an uptick because the only thing that's changed in this regard was the CPU, and most of these were bottlenecked by the GPU by some of the tests I was running. Zirconian kernel? Google's Zircon kernel. I don't know if I would use a Google kernel. That's like, I don't know. Something about it just makes me pause. All right. Well, let me know what you guys, what do you guys have questions on? Was there any test that you'd like to see here? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to go ahead and cut this video right here so people can watch this on the back replay. And then if you have any questions in chat, stay tuned and we can go ahead and answer any of those questions, as this was pretty fun. I love getting new stuff, testing it out. I know some of these were less than ideal for a full benchmarking run. Typically, you'd run a giant test suite over the course of about 8 hours. I think many people have already done that with many of these kernels. But if there is something here that you'd like to see, we can definitely do it as well. I do need to upgrade to 1440p and probably switch out my monitors. But I don't know. 1080p is fine. It's not bad. Folding at home over the weekend. Oh, you know what? We didn't do any mining tests. Anytime I think folding at home, I'm like, oh, crypto mining, which is terrible. I still have my crypto rig in the other room, still mining away. I think I'm taking one GPU off come December 20th, I think is when the DAC size will reach 4 gigs and one of the cards on that rig won't be mining anymore. So I'll box that up and do a giveaway on that probably. Because I have about 5 of those old RX cards that I want to go ahead and do. I did a bulk purchase of about 5 of them because there was a huge stock and they were super cheap. I think about 150 bucks for a lot of the 580 cards, which are great for mini kernel things. So I bought a bunch of them to build that up. I think I was going to do a video on it, but then I was like, you know what? I'll just mine it for a couple months, and then once it makes its ROI, I can just give them away. 5,600 versus Bitcoin. Yeah, no, can't do Bitcoin except on ASCII chips. I think I saw something. Another person on old YouTube said they were thinking about doing Bitcoin mining or something. I'm like, no. Don't, no. You just no. Ethereum mining's where it's at if you're interested in that, and it's only good for about the next 5 or 6 months. So you don't have to worry about graphics cards being bought by a miner because they're gonna lose their butt. They'll never see the ROI because that's going to be going to proof of stake from proof of work and no longer will be actually mining anymore. So no worries about GPU stock being bought up by people mining cryptocurrency. That's not really a thing anymore, and most cryptocurrencies are shifting away from proof of work, so no, you don't need to worry about that, which is nice. So I remember, was it 2018? Oh, that was a time we don't speak of. Although later that year, I did start my YouTube channel. That was actually September of 2018. So it wasn't a bad year. Yeah, I think right now I'm paying about 14 cents a kilowatt, which is a little bit on the higher end of side. I remember I used to get a pretty good deal a couple years back where it was about 8 or 9 cents a kilowatt. No longer. It's all a little bit sky high as far as the prices go on that. It's harder to get reasonable electricity here, more and more here in the States, which is fine. To be expected. Yeah, ASCII chips are programmable chips. They're only capable of doing like one type of processing, but they do it extremely well. That's what most of proof of work miners are built off of. There's plenty of companies out there. They're super shady. They're all based outside the States, so they might steal your money. One of the biggest Bitcoin miner operations, I think Bitmain, they've made over billion, I think it was 10 or 20 billion dollars last year in profits, whether that's from taking from folks when it came to using these miners for extended periods of time, reaping the rewards, and then selling off the stock once they've gotten what they can get from that engineering. It's such a shady game. Don't get me started. Don't get me started in crypto and mining. Do you have an email address where you answer questions on a one-on-one basis? I don't do. I have an email. I get a ton of mail per day, probably 100 something emails. Sometimes I'm able to answer. Most times I'm not. I do try to get to a lot of questions, but most times I don't. And I just take those questions and sometimes make a video, but a lot of times they just end up not being responsible, or I'm just not able to respond to them because I have a day job. I still do this, and I also have other interests and hobbies and a family and all that business. I love doing this though. Don't take it as, hey, this is woe is me. It's just I don't have time to answer many questions. I usually have a lot of people hit me up and say, hey, do you do consulting, or I can pay you for this type of thing. If it's a base computer issue, my time, I would, the amount of money I charge you to fix your problem is definitely not worth it. I would charge you more than a new computer, and to me that's not fair to you. That's why I don't respond and I don't accept cash per basis type thing, because most of my consulting work would be in the business realm. Hourly rates anywhere between 150 and 300, and then there's also other aspects that build into it. Most times I do a retainer or something of that nature. Again, it's just far beyond most things that I'd get from YouTube, and it's nothing I have transitioned into because, as I said, I'm still very comfortable in my day job, and as long as I have them as a cornerstone, it's something I can't really build on or do a side consulting business, or I wouldn't be comfortable with, because I wouldn't be able to give it the time and attention it needs. So long story short, no, I really don't answer basic how-to questions, although sometimes I do. There's a time something rolls in there and like, hey, how do I update my kernel? And I'll be like, oh, well, just type this command in, and then I'm done. If it's something like that, I usually do respond. But most times it's a bit more involved, for sure. You can make up your video yesterday by looking at DWM. Peter, eventually you're going to get me, man. Eventually. Just quit your day job so you have time to answer all your questions. Ron, that's a brilliant idea. I still love that, though. Honestly, I probably could, but I still enjoy going in there, and I still enjoy my employer. The person I work for is a very, very pleasant person to work for, and I love talking to him. So it's one of those things I'll just keep doing until, I think I always say, just keep riding that gravy train until the biscuit wheels fall off. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. I'm not going to change anything. I love what I do on YouTube. A lot of times you'll see a whole variety of videos, and that's just me obsessing over some form of technology and loving it. I love what I do. And that is the most paramount thing. That's probably why you haven't seen as many like sponsored videos. It's not like I don't get emails from reputable companies to do sponsored videos. It's just a lot of times I don't have the time, or it's maybe something where I just haven't fit them into the schedule. I'll still do sponsored videos. It's just maybe only a couple a year, which is a far cry from what you see most elsewhere on YouTube. And ad spots, I've done a couple. I think the last one I did was with Linode, and I still have to do another ad spot with them. I know they, I don't know. That was from September. I need to call them and talk to them because they have a good team over there as well. But again, it's one of those things I just haven't quite gotten into. And I love a lot of the opportunities that come my way, but a lot of times it's just so much stuff everywhere that I'm like, I probably should do better. But at the end of the day, it's all about enjoying life. That's why I do it. That's why I started YouTube, was like, hey, it'd be cool. And it's about that fun, having a good time while doing what you love. That's what it's about. That's where it is all that's where it's all based from when my channel. I love it. That's it. What route would you suggest for someone breaking into the field to get A+, Net Plus, or Security, or CCNA? Ooh, that's a good one, DVD. I would probably suggest Net Plus and Security Plus as a base. Those are really good skills. You learn a lot during that period of time, and you have a lot of applicable positions you can apply for with those certs. It's easier to get in the door that way as well. If you really, really love networking, though, you can do Network Plus, Security Plus, and grab your CCNA. I always say CCNA last, though, because you have to refresh it every 3 years. And I believe is Network Plus and Security Plus. I don't know if I got grandfathered in or not on that one. I think they do expire after 10 years now. I remember they had something where it just lasts forever, and then they started making it where you have to re-up every decade or something. But it's better than Cisco's requirements for sure. Is the 5600 or 5600X I am seeing here? This is the 5600X. I believe. Let's Neo fetch it just to make sure. Yeah, AMD Ryzen 5 5600X, 12 threads, 6 cores, base clock, 3.7 gigahertz. And I did link that in chat for the actual benchmarking results. Here's the benchmarking results again, though, just in case you missed them. Just take them with a grain of salt. Like I said, this wasn't exactly scientific. I did like Open Arena, Shadow the Tomb Raider, Blender, and then Time GCC. Blender and Time GCC is a better gauge of CPU, and you can actually look at the Blender benchmarks at openbenchmarking.org and then just go to the test. and you can see a lot of other tests that have been run. Just know that the averages you see on the actual main overview screen of openbenchmarking.org, click down in, you can see a drill down, and you can see by user what their scores are. You'll have users that do a lot of overclocking and tweaking to get the absolute most out of the system. You'll see like a J's 2 cents in there, and he'll be at the top. And then you'll see like me, and you'll see like, hey, this guy was running a whole bunch of processes and decided to run this benchmark. So I'll be towards like the bottom or middle. And that's just how I a lot of times do the benchmarking. As I said, I don't do a lot of the hardware aspects on the channel. Xorg has not had a major update in 6 years, so why is Wayland not taken over yet? Your thoughts? Wayland sucks. It's one thing that has been touted in the Linux community for like 10 years, and I've asked veterans about this too. I think I asked like Lunduke and some other folks about Wayland. I was like, hey, what the hell's the deal with Wayland? Everyone's been saying it's going to take over, and it's been like 2 years. And he was like, oh, no. They were saying it's going to take over 10 years ago. It just hasn't. And it's because, I don't know. It just, there's a lot of missing things still in the Wayland project. I think it'll eventually get there, maybe, someday. But I'm not going to hold my breath on it. Every time I try Wayland, something bad happens. So I always end up with Xorg. And that's the realities of it. I really hope that we can get there one day. It doesn't suck. It's just not finished. Yeah, it's... yeah. I'm gonna leave that one alone. I'm gonna leave that one alone. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. That's a great comparison. JD, sounds like Wayland is stuck in the same spot as IPv6. I think that is a very, very good comparison. Both we know is superior. Both have better technology. But however, everyone still uses Xorg and everyone still uses IPv4. Except for some. There's still some. But a great comparison. I love that. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and shut it down for today, guys. This will be an unlisted stream afterwards. Give me a couple hours. I'm going to chop it up, try it into, condense it down into one YouTube video here, upload that probably around noon to 1 o'clock my time, which is probably going to be about an hour or two from now. And then if you want the full stream with all of the awkward silences and me doing gaffes, by all means, head over to Titus Tech Talk. That's a different YouTube channel, and I just upload the full live stream there. Usually that goes live about the same time. I'll try to actually go ahead and start the upload of the full live stream over on Titus Tech Talk. And then probably by the time it finishes processing off, I'll also have this one actually edited up on the main channel here, and we can go from there. And if you want it immediately, obviously, YouTube members, I always just put these as private member videos as well. So if you're a YouTube member, you can always do that as well. But thank you all. This was a fun one. I absolutely was scared to death last night that I wasn't going to be able to get 5600 done because I would do something really stupid. And yes, I did something really stupid multiple times. But luckily, technology is so resilient nowadays that everything worked out great. We were able to do some benchmarks today, get some good results on open benchmarking, and do some Phoronix testing, which is always my favorite. I love Phoronix. And if you're interested in doing these tests yourself, by all means, go over to openbenchmarking.org or just download the Phoronix-test-suite and check it out. It's all CLI based. I don't know if they have a GUI yet. I should probably look into that, but I don't care. CLI's king. And that's where I'm going to leave this video for today. Thank you all so much. It has been an absolute blast. And tomorrow's video, I have something special for everyone. And I took this was, now you might think it's a little rudimentary, but it is a lot of fun. Something where I haven't actually designed a GUI in a long time. I've always done stuff everywhere from CLI. Tomorrow's video, I made an entire GUI PowerShell program. Basically, you type one line in, it'll pop up the GUI and be able to do a lot of restores and those types of things. And I'm going to expand on that project as well. And then also take what I did there and implement that into the debloat script, so that'll turn into a GUI as well. As, hey, what's better than just clicking one button and having it do everything that you ever wanted? Nothing, right? All right. Oh, Sparky, you gave me an idea for a video. Temple OS is the devil. Yeah, I love it. All right, guys, take it easy. See y'all in the next one.